All right, hello everybody. We do see quite a few folks have joined. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes for additional folks to trickle in, and then we will get started. All right, team. I see quite a few folks have hopped in, so I think we can go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining today. This is Epsilon3's very first webinar. As a quick note, we will be hosting these semi-frequently going forward, so definitely keep an eye out for future communications as well. Today, we are going to be demonstrating the upcoming improvements to permissions. As a quick note, we are targeting a mid-February release. This, of course, is subject to change. However, we'll be sure to keep you posted with any updates in that realm. The purpose of today is primarily educational. That's why I've invited mostly admins here. I want to make sure that we give you a nice sneak peek about some of these improvements so you can start thinking about how you might choose to implement them upon their release. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and we will get started. All righty, so as a quick kind of review of how permissions have been handled in Epsilon3 historically, it has been a bit of a two-part process that is defined both with operator roles as well as workspace access. Operator roles will be configured by or are configured by an admin in your workspace, given a name, a code, and have a few options for more granular permissions around who is able to release a procedure, who is able to suggest edits, skip steps, or repeat steps within a running procedure. These operator roles are then, of course, assigned to individual users in combination with a workspace access level. These workspace access levels are admin, editor, operator, viewer, or in some cases, no access with elevated project access for more confidential projects. And the combination of those operator roles and workspace access defines what somebody's able to both view or see with an Epsilon3 environment, as well as execute in a running procedure and or approval process. While this model has worked for most use cases, we definitely have recognized that there have been some either requests and or limitations uncovered by teams over the past year or so. So that is where we are now going to be introducing our new role-based permission model. So big note here that I want to mention is that upon these new improvements release, all of your existing permissions will remain intact. all the configurations around, access levels and or what somebody's able to do in Epsilon3 will completely be exactly as you are accustomed to. The primary difference that you're going to see upon this release is that there will be a variety of new roles with an E3 prefix here. This is the first way in which we are essentially copying over those existing roles so that you do not have to take any immediate action upon its release. You'll see here that these E3 roles essentially own the different permissions that you are accustomed to, view permissions, operate, edit, etc. And then you will still have all of your existing customized roles with their associated codes visible here as well. These roles will still be assigned to all of the users as they were before, and this will still define exactly what certain people are able to do within running procedures and approvals, ensuring that they're able to sign off in all the capacities that they are accustomed to. That being said, you now see a variety of new options over here, and this is where we get into some of the improvements that are coming down in terms of the role-based permissions. So whether you are editing any of your existing roles or creating a new one, you'll see that there's a lot more options of what you can do now. So as you're accustomed to, you will still, if you're creating a new role, for example, give a role a code, and that's what will be visible within those sign-off capacities, and the role name. This is where I'm going to introduce one of the major new distinctions with the role-based permission model. Previously, you were accustomed to somebody, let's say with admin access, immediately inheriting the edit, operate, and view accesses. All of these access levels now will be handled independently. That being said, if I are to give somebody all view permissions, they do not automatically, or all edit, they do not automatically inherit all of the operator permissions. You will also see that we have now introduced a ton more granularity in each of these different categories, defining specifically what somebody's able to view, operate, edit, or be an administrator for in each of these categories. So essentially, you are able to now pick and choose different aspects of Epsilon3 somebody does have access to at each level. Viewer permissions, of course, will have this asterisk next to it, which does denote that these do not require a paid account. So nothing's changed on that end. But again, you will see in each of these categories, we have a ton more levels of granularity we can choose to adopt, enabling you to configure your user access in a much more scalable way. So if I were to add in all elements of an operator, maybe all elements of an edit, but one use case we heard from a lot of folks is, especially as folks are adopting different modules within Epsilon3, maybe there are distinct teams that are specifically working on procedures or work instructions, and other distinct teams that may be managing inventory or other aspects of your PLM. So where you could choose for somebody to have the ability to edit procedures and such, but not be an editor in the builds module. Very similarly, another user story we heard quite frequently is that there may be a sysadmin or similar role that is responsible for configuring all of these settings and or user management in Epsilon3, but does not configure or do anything else related to executing procedures, et cetera, and as such does not need visibility into some of the information held there. In this use case, you also could choose for somebody to just be an administrator within Epsilon3 without the ability to view any of the other contents outside of the settings panel. So really, really cool options, especially as you do choose to scale with Epsilon3, where you're able to configure all of these user settings in a much more granular fashion. So once you have, either configured some existing roles or created new roles, you will still want to head over to the user page, at which point you will start actually associating these roles to individual user or users. A couple quick notes to mention here. This page looks pretty similar, but you will see a few new functionalities associated with it. By hovering over the roles here, you will see all of the roles that are associated, as well as with the project access. With both of these, one quick note is that all of the roles that somebody has, their permissions will essentially roll up to that level, granting them all permissions from the combined roles in that capacity. Another big distinction here, again, your roles that you already have configured will maintain or will persist throughout this. However, roles and project access or workspace access and project access are now distinct. So essentially, if you invite somebody to the platform with a workspace role, they do not automatically get added to every single project. Projects will be opt-in. So essentially, if they were added in with the workspace roles, they may have ability to see anything that is not within a project, snippets, different settings, inventory, et cetera. But things with project-specific association will only be visible once they are given explicit access to that project. Let's cover workspace roles here and editing them for 2 users at once. So in this case, if I were to select both of these folks here, I can choose to edit the workspace roles and add them to 2 users, multiple at one time, et cetera. So you have the nice functionality to add roles, regardless of what roles they might already have had in common. It will just add in these 2 new roles to them. Similarly, I can choose to also remove roles in the same fashion. Again, it's not going to necessarily recognize that one of them may not have all of them. It will just go ahead and remove those roles from both users. On the project side, actually, let's keep these selected. You will have the ability to edit project roles, again, separately from workspace roles. This is where we're also going to introduce some really awesome new functionality that folks have been asking for left and right. First of all, if I were to select this parent project, you will now see that I am editing the roles here. And by default, it will prompt you to copy over the existing workspace roles. However, if there is an instance where you do not want all of those roles, you also can choose to pick and choose which roles you would like this user or these users to have for this specific project. It's going to introduce a much more streamlined and scalable user management, where, for example, you could have one technician role and then assign that role to certain users in certain projects if they only have the capacity to act as technicians in very specific scenarios. So you will be able to assign specific roles to specific projects for users rather than blanketed across everything. In addition, we are also introducing the concept of sub-project roles that, again, will default to the parent project roles, but you can choose to specify at the sub-project level. So again, a huge new element of granularity that will be introduced with this new permission model. Again, these sub-projects do not have to be the same. I could choose to add them in, viewer in one and an operator in another. So really, really awesome way to get a bit more granular with that. One quick note though, as we are editing these 2 users at once I do basically copy over or set these new permissions, it will overwrite the roles for these projects. So this is not going to be the additive function. You will be essentially overriding, and it will be defined entirely by what you have specified at this stage. Lastly here, you might have already gotten a little bit of an idea here. We are introducing the concept of groups in Epsilon3 for user management. You'll have a quick preview as to what groups a user is a part of here. And you can then see these groups and manage them by tabbing over at the top of the page. The groups here are kind of a two-part feature. First of all, this will benefit push groups for skim provisioning. So this will make user management from that side of things much more easy. This will also streamline user management directly from the UI. For example, here I can create these different groups, give it a name here, define the workspace roles, and then also define project and or sub-project roles. Upon assigning these different roles here and adding different users to them, I can then essentially manage all of these different access levels from this group, as opposed to having to go in and individually or make sure I'm selecting every single user from the user page. So this will be a much more simplified and streamlined method to bulk edit folks and maybe have the exact same permissions in this case. Lastly here, we of course still do have the option of adding or of managing user access from the project itself. So this is going to be the most similar to what folks are already accustomed to, where essentially I can go into any project or sub-project, toggle over to users, and modify their access levels based on roles and such directly from this project page as well. A little bit more of a focused view for this user management. especially if you maybe do not have a full administrative system or settings across the workspace. All right, team. So I also should have mentioned that being this webinar that we did not expect this to take the full hour. However, we do expect that there are a ton of questions here. I also do have some teammates directly in the room with me. So we're going to go ahead and start demonstrating some of the answers to this that have not already been answered directly within the within chat as well. All right. So I do see that there is a question around red line and blue line permissions. So this will still be handled directly within roles. So essentially this would be directly within, let's see, add in here, let's open up both. So we do have the ability still whether or not an operator is able to suggest edits. And then if any of the other more specific approval processes are involved, depending on which procedure, et cetera, you still will have the ability to add that in from the editor side as well. So red lines and blue lines, again, will be a kind of a combination between the editor and the editor and the operator access levels. All right, and then another question of how somebody might be able to see all editors or all admins. That is where I would recommend going back into the user page. At this point, I believe, let's try this live. It's a good question, actually. I'm going to tag in one of the engineers here, essentially filtering for all editors or all admins or all roles that might contain those.
Yeah. Hey, Dimitra. Okay, so there's not editors and admins in the new permissions in this new permissions model. That gives you a lot more granularity over, I guess, which permissions you can have. So there's not kind of the same notion of an editor or admin. You could have a user that has all of these edit group permissions or all of the admin group permissions. We currently don't have a good way, or we currently don't have a way to show you all of the users with those specific permissions, but it's something we've been working on also, is giving you an easier view of who has what permissions and roles.
All right, next question is if the planning section is still workspace admin specific, or can this be made available to project admins? I believe that this is in relation to folks that were previously using the method of giving somebody workspace access none and then elevated project access, and how that had certain limitations with what you could see at the workspace level. That will now be handled very well with this new model. Essentially, you will be able to say that somebody has the workspace or the workspace role of schedule or of different views, and again, those will be handled directly within the roles as well. But you will be able to distinctly say, great, this person has access to these workspace elements, and then again, opting into specific projects. But that was a major aspect of these new roles here, is essentially saying, great, is somebody able to view schedules or not at the workspace level? So that will be massively improved with this new structure. So with the new group function, will it be possible to change bulk users from editor to viewer, essentially changing from using a license to not? Yes, absolutely. So if we were using a group, say, we have this sample group, they have the workspace role of, in this case, editor. And again, it could be any variety of actually more specifically configured roles. And you get access to all these different projects as well. If I were to add users directly in here and then create this, that group has now been applied to these two users. I apologize, my screen's going a little bit slow here. So I now have this sample group with these roles. If I wanted to essentially change these from editors, a paid license type, to to a non-paid license type, I could easily come in here and say, great, I want these all to be editors and just copy these workspace roles so I don't have to re-add it, save this, and they would now no longer consume a license. Again, really nice streamlined way to manage them from groups rather than having to go through and manually select everybody, especially if you have dozens of users with that group. All right, we've got another question. If we can copy a role or a group to create a new one. So essentially, I believe you're referring to like duplicating one if you wanted to not have to worry about checking each one.
Yep, that's a great question. It's not something we're supporting in this first version, but it's something we could definitely add in the future.
A question: with all the extra granularity, are there any tools or tips in writing procedures to ensure that a procedure is valid, i.e. that it can be executed successfully? Honestly, I don't think that would be an issue, especially given that all of your existing permissions will be maintained. So essentially, with all the new granularity, you can be adding in new roles, but it's not going to take away any functionality you have now. But yeah, would love for you to reach out to us with some more context if necessary. But I can't imagine that being a problem, just given that, essentially you'll be able to continue using Epsilon3 as you already have been. You'll just have additional functionality now. Got another question about who has access to creating and editing operations within the planning tab, and is that editable? Yes, so within a role, as I mentioned here, like you have the ability to say on the view level, if somebody is able to work within schedules, operations being within the schedules aspect as well. You also now will have the ability, let's see. Ooh, actually, that's a great question. So we've got schedules here with an operator. Actually, John, do you know, I believe that should still basically be, if, given that schedules and operators or schedules and operations are so closely tied to editing procedures. But curious if there's any sort of permissions around who can edit schedules themselves.
Yeah, we can get back to you on that one via email. I believe it's a combination of, there's a schedule permission and within the roles. But I believe there's also some ability to view schedules as part of the projects that you have access to. But we can get you an answer with more context or with more detail.
Awesome, thanks, John. We've got another question around if if you can use the API to give or remove project permissions. This is absolutely where we would recommend some of the newer functionality with the user groups via SCIM. So that is directly kind of in relation to user management external from the Epsilon3 UI. So happy to go over that in more detail in a follow-up call. Just because a little bit difficult for me to demo here, but absolutely the intention with these groups here, yes. All right, we've got another question. Can I give an operator the permission now to mark a part as scrap in the inventory by themselves? Until now, this has only been for editors. So with this, that is where, let's see, if I'm looking into roles. Ooh, so actually, John, I might ask you on that. So we can still give operators builds access here and edit. Would marking scrap be within the edit or within the operator?
Actions inventory are often will be under builds operate. So you should be able to just create a role that has specifically can operate builds or can scrap and give them that specific permission. It might not be as granular as only being able to scrap inventory. It might control other things like being able to add inventory, but in the future, we can also break these to, be extremely granular per action. But this gets you a little closer, I think, to only being able to give someone that specific permission.
Okay. Will the project level operator roles integrate with the skills feature so that a user can complete a certification to gain access to a role without an admin manually adjusting permissions? take a look in here.
I can also answer
Oh
this
yeah,
one.
please go ahead.
Yeah, and so with this release, it will not be, but this is something we're currently working on. It's been a big ask, and it's something we're gonna add in the very near term.
Awesome. Next question is, currently the role system was used to distinguish groups. Should roles and groups be managed together since they pertain to the same people? If not, which is the preferred way to separate out roles and groups? Let's see. Okay, so I think the main distinction here, I would personally recommend, and then I'll pass it to you, John, as well, um, is that these roles still absolutely can pertain to a group of people. Like, technician pertains to all technicians, regardless of that single area. Where the groups kind of come into play, again, is maybe for folks that have multiple types of permissions or needs here. So it doesn't have to only be a group of technicians. It could be a group of, you know, I don't know if I've got a great example here, but of all employees or of, all folks in a certain facility, et cetera. So it's just a kind of way to combine multiple types of roles and their permissions in one fell swoop, as opposed to having to be as granular as just of just technicians, et cetera. Yeah, so groups are essentially a collection of roles, with the key differentiating factor being the sign-off aspect.
Yeah, I think moving forward, you'll probably want to think of right now in the app. It makes more sense to think of a group of people as a role. So you give the role to a group. I think moving forward, you'll want to use groups for that functionality. Once we make this update, all the permissions will stay the same, but you can start creating groups and then give them that role that has the permissions you want them to have, and manage the groups through the groups tab instead of trying to manage them specifically through the roles like we're doing now.
Awesome. And also happy to follow up with that one in future calls as well. We've got another question. Will this new capability address the following? We would like to be able to limit the number of procedures users see in the list, especially those for different areas that have nothing to do with them. They've attempted doing this by limiting project access, but they lost ability to edit and use snippets. Yes, absolutely. That is one of the major kind of features of this new permission model, is that with projects being opt-in, you can still have full workspace access to snippets, and different aspects that are not necessarily associated to a project, and then assign or give folks specific access to projects and or sub-projects for them to execute procedures in the realms that they have training in. I think, yeah, we got another one around that. So yes, again, big improvements with snippets and such that were currently a limitation. So I've got another question. Is the idea that we need to redesign our roles and groups definition based on this update? Personally, I say no. It's really that, again, all of your different permissions and roles will still function exactly as you have had. You will just have the option to make them much more granular, especially in the context, again, of, wanting somebody potentially to only be able to act as a technician or an engineer in certain capacities. You'll have a much more granular function to kind of opt into those projects instead. Again, you are absolutely welcome to come in here and modify any of the roles you have to give them these more specific permissions. But with these different, E3 prefix roles, no immediate action will be necessary. All right, let's see. We've got another question. Is there going to be an overview with all the roles and what type of permissions they have? So that is going to be essentially this kind of overview page right here. You can see here that the blue check does indicate that they have all of the permissions within this, and the gray box indicates that they have some. So if I were to look into here, I can essentially look into more granular aspects. But again, from that primary page, you at least can get a general overview of the permissions that are associated with that specific role. I've got another question. In terms of pricing for paid accounts, is there a difference between having editor plus operators and admin roles, or are they effectively the same? These will still remain unchanged, where essentially anything that is not a viewer will be the same price for the company. So we still just have the one paid versus unpaid license type.
Yeah, any user with a permission that's a paid permission, and those are all denoted on the role screen. So any user with a role that has a paid permission will be a paid user, and it's the same as before in terms of what they can do and cannot do.
See. Got another question. Are there plans to allow different users to customize their E3 interface, having different views of the procedure, list, or single card? A lot of those customizations are still available on the procedure site itself. It's not necessarily user specific at the moment. But again, always happy to chat more about that kind of feedback in the future as well. Okay. We've got some other questions around just future plans for tablet and or iOS apps. Absolutely on our radar, something we are actively discussing as a team, and we are happy to keep you all posted about it in the future. Got another question of, is there permission to view documents or files? I assume here that we mentioned specifically around file storage. And in that case, yes, file storage is one of these specific granularities you can choose to add view access to, et cetera. So file storage is going to be at each of these different levels if you'd like somebody to be able to view, et cetera. Okay. Any recommendations on how to update user roles or permissions without needing to rev existing procedures to fix the sign-off permissions? So in this case, you shouldn't need to uprev any of your procedures. Again, essentially all of the roles that you currently have within your workspace will still exist here. So all of your sign-offs and all of the roles that you, or the folks that have these different roles will be the exact same. So even if you were to, let's say, modify some of these roles to accept additional permissions, the code being the same would remain unchanged within your procedures as well. So no action would be necessary there, unless, of course, you were to create a brand new role, but that would be the same functionality you're accustomed to with today's Epsilon3 as well. Okay. So this new roles update is expected. We're targeting a mid-February release. Again, that is subject to change due to final testing, but again, we're looking good for a mid-February release. All right. Will users with project-specific admin roles be able to edit roles and users as they pertain to their project, or will that capability stay restricted to workspace level admins?
Yeah, so project admins will be able to, yes, add users. The ability to create new projects will be controlled by workspace admins, so having the team settings permission for a workspace user. So yeah, project-specific admins will still be able to manage the users within their project, but kind of things outside of that, like creating new projects and sub-projects, will go with the team permission.
Okay, let's see. We've got another question kind of relating to be able to quickly visualize who is taking up a paid license versus not. That should still be available with some of our basic reporting as well. But again, we do hear you that it would be great to visualize exactly which roles have which permissions for easy reporting as well. So keep you all posted on that one.
I believe on the user screen as well, we'll still show you the number of paid seats. So you should still have the same view into the number of paid seats within the org there if you have org admin permissions.
All right, team. Looks like those are most of the questions in the chat. There are a few that are a bit unrelated to permissions, so would love we can follow back up with answers to those after the webinar, or feel free to reach out to us on support and happy to answer you immediately there as well. Again, we're very excited to introduce this new permission model. We recognize that this is a lot of new functionality, so if you think of some other questions after this webinar's completion, please feel free to reach out either directly to Lily or I, or to support for any follow-up information as well. We also expect there will be a further communication once this is formally released, so please make sure to keep an eye out. And yes, can't wait for everybody to get a chance to check out these new permissions. All right, well, with that, happy to give everybody 25 minutes back. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.